tax benefits will be a lot better. What about refugees, international students, work permit holders, permanent residents, Canadian citizens? Who exactly can start a business here in Canada? What we'll be talking about today is all things how to start a business here in Canada. I just got this humidifier. It just came in the mail. Apparently this is one of the reasons why I keep catching a cold, is because in here has like dry air and the air is supposed to be moist so that you don't catch a cold. So I got a humidifier to keep in here very moist. So apparently I'm supposed to, these should be soaked in water. It's in the water now, no going back. And I also have some essential oil. This is lavender oil. 1, 2, 3 drops. That's it. And there we have it. We have a diffuser. It smells good, really good. So the first thing I want to talk about is what exactly is a business, and I'm gonna say it very briefly. A business is any venture that makes you money. So once there is anything that is actually making you some money, then it is a business. That is the first thing I wanted to start with. So starting a business in Canada as an immigrant in 2025, how do you go about this? So the first thing I want to go into, mostly because I'm talking directly to immigrants, is who exactly can start a business here in Canada. If you are a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident here in Canada, you can go ahead and start a business at any time. In regards to getting a permit, getting license and things like that is not a requirement for starting a business in Canada. So the whole process of getting license and permit and all that is what you do afterwards, and that is very specific to the industry that you are in. So what about international students? Now, international students can start a business in Canada, but there are a lot of restrictions. So when I started my business, I was actually an international student in Canada. I was not yet a permanent resident. When I started my business and I gathered information, it made sense to start a business in my home country. So as an international student, you can start a business in Canada, but it has to be a business that doesn't need to be registered. So in order for a business to be registered, and this was information that I got from Prince Edward Island, I contacted someone that runs the registration of business there in Prince Edward Island. They said you only need to register your business in Canada if there's a business name. Once there isn't a business name, you don't need to register it. So let's say, for example, you start a business and it's a freelance business. With a freelance business, you can go ahead and just use your actual name. If you use your name, then you can say you're operating a business under your name. If you're operating a business under your name, then it doesn't need to be registered. This applies to every person who deals with business in Canada. So registration would be the first thing and the first step to starting a business. Now, the only other thing that I didn't mention is that you need an idea and you need a business plan. A business plan helps you to stay on track and always work towards what you actually want to achieve and not deviate from what you want to accomplish. Now, as an international student, you cannot register a business here in Canada. As any type of temporary resident, you cannot register your business here. The only persons who can register a business in Canada are permanent residents and Canadian citizens. So if you're starting a business and it won't be your name, then you won't be able to start that business as an international student. However, the catch to it is that you could get a permanent resident to start that business for you. You would only need them to actually register the business. So on paper, it seems as though they own the business, and then you as an international student is the one who controls the running and operations of the business. So that is the option that you have as an international student. So yes, you can start the business. Yes, you can operate under your own name. And yes, you can ask a permanent resident to register the business on your behalf. Just know, if you're going to ask somebody like a permanent resident to register your business, just make sure you have an actual written contract to make sure they don't take away your business from you. So make sure there is some type of documentation that this person agrees to register your business, but it's your business. So what about visitors coming to Canada? Can visitors start a business here in Canada? Again, a visitor cannot register a business here in Canada. A visitor also cannot start a business in their name. So a visitor won't be able to start or run a business here at all, mostly because you're not a resident, you're not temporary, you're not permanent, you're a visitor. So visitor is different. You can't work, so you wouldn't be able to do anything. However, let's say it's an online business that you're starting, or you're running a business or starting a business outside of the country, you are free to do so. What about work permit holders? Which work permit holders can start a business? So employer specific work permit holders cannot start a business in Canada because there's a restriction on exactly what you're here in Canada to do, which is to work for one specific company. You can't do anything other than that. So for you, you cannot start a business here in Canada, unfortunately, unless you get an open work permit. Now, if you have an open work permit that allows you to work here in Canada, you can start a business, but again, you cannot register the business. But you can ask somebody to register it if you want to. The easiest thing to do, and quite frankly, the easiest is not the ideal for everybody, but quite frankly, if you're an international student, temporary worker, you plan to become a permanent resident, just wait until you're a permanent resident and then start the business. If you still want to start the business, you can start it and operate it out of your home country and do whatever your home country requires you to do to own a business in their country. That's one option. What about refugees? I haven't forgotten refugees and asylum seekers. Can you start a business here in Canada? Yes, you can start a business. However, you still have the same requirements as an international student, where you actually can't register the business, but you can start it, you can run the business in your name. Now let me get into how is it that an international student can start a business here in Canada. You can start a business here in Canada because you're a tax resident of Canada. Once you are a tax resident of Canada, this means that you are paying taxes to the country, even though you are a temporary resident. When you're filing your taxes, there's a section there that asks you if you own a business. On that section, you say yes. And on that section, you're going to need to pay taxes. Now, one of the biggest parts of owning a business in Canada is taxes. Taxes is something that can either make your life way better or make it a lot more difficult. But ultimately, filing taxes for most people is stressful. So when it comes to taxes and owning your business, you have a huge tax advantage just from owning a business here in Canada. The huge tax advantage here is that if your revenue is $10,000 and your expenses is $9,000, your income that is taxed is actually $1,000. You only left with $1,000. The only thing that is taxed is $1,000. If you're an employee and your income is $10,000, you are taxed on $10,000. This is the huge tax advantage that you receive as someone who owns a business. This applies to every person who owns a business, even if you're also in a job. Once you are a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen, you are free to go ahead and register your business and start your business. After that, the thing that you need to iron out is all the license and permits you require to get based on the industry you're going in. Let's say, for example, you're going in the food industry and you want to start a restaurant. If you're starting a restaurant, you know that you need some type of food license or food handlers thingy, and all those things you're going to need as someone dealing with food. You have to contact the licensing bodies and ask them what you need, and they'll tell you what you need based on your industry. So that's the next part. So business idea, business plan, then you need to register the business, then you need to iron out all permits, license that you need and get them. And after all those paperwork are finished, you are free to finally start your business and actually run the actual business based on the idea. So let's talk a little bit about when you actually start a business. So when you start a business, you need to also figure out if you want the business to be a sole trader business, a partnership, or a company. A sole trader or a partnership business is one that has the least tax benefits. The biggest tax benefit is if you are a company. Now, in school, they teach you that a company is made up of 5 or more people. In Canada, on the other hand, even one person can create a company. So even if you're one individual and you own your own business, you can make it into a company by incorporating it, aka also starting an LLC. An LLC, or incorporating the business, is how it becomes a corporate company. As one person, you can create your own company and employ yourself as an employee of the company. When you do something like this, your tax advantages significantly increase. This is because the amount of taxes you pay is lower than someone who is a sole trader or a partnership company. Now, a sole trader and a partnership business has to pay the same taxes that regular employees pay. Let's say, for example, you're watching this video. You're making over $5,000 per month. If you're making more than 5,000 Canadian dollar per month, incorporate that business and your tax benefits will be a lot better. You can just go Google how to incorporate a business based on which province you live in, and it will give you instructions what to do. Comment below if you have any questions, if there's anything that I didn't touch on as I talk about taxes. You can let me know what I didn't talk about, and I can do another video talking about those things relating to starting your own business or just running a business in general. There's a lot that I can share. I just realized in the beginning I didn't mention like my knowledge in business. So for me, I have an associate degree in business studies and entrepreneurship. So I studied singularly entrepreneurship as well, and then I have also a business degree in business administration, which also includes a lot about how to own and run your own business. I also own my own business as well, so that also gives me some knowledge. So the information I shared here is based on my experience and also my education. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.